Question time. We now move on to topicals, and the first topical in the name of Deputy Jim O'Callaghan, who has 4 minutes.
That's Can Corla. 2 weeks ago, on the 18th of April, a young 19-year-old man called Harry Boland was killed while he was cycling along the Storgan dual carriageway. He was knocked down, and it was a terrible tragedy for his family. And at the outset, I want to offer my condolences to his parents, to his brother, to his extended family, and indeed to all his friends. The reason why I bring forward a topical issue tonight and why I mention the death of Harry Boland is because, unfortunately, his tragic death means that he has become the 6th cyclist to be killed on our roads this year. Regrettably, this is a trend in deaths on the roads of cyclists that has seen increases in the numbers over the past 2 years. In 2017, there were 15 cyclists killed on our road. That was an increase on the numbers in 2016, when 10 were killed on the road. Unfortunately, we now find ourselves with only 4 months gone in this year, and we have 6 cyclists who've lost their lives on the roads of Ireland. The reason why I put down this topical issue, Can Corla, is because I want the government, and in particular the Minister for Transport, who I'm pleased to see is here, to devote more attention to the whole issue of trying to improve safety for cyclists on our road. And I want him and the government to devote more resources to ensuring that there's sufficient infrastructure in place to ensure that there's protection for cyclists on our road. If we are serious about protecting cyclists, we need to increase government infrastructure. I cycle around this city. It's a very efficient way of travelling through the city. It's a very environmentally friendly way of travelling around the city. But regrettably, I cannot say that it is a very safe way of travelling around this city. The biggest threat to cyclists arise from the very proximity that they can come into with very large vehicles. In order to ensure that that threat does not exist to the same level as it does now, we need to try to segregate cyclists from large vehicles. We need to try to protect cyclists from large vehicles. And unfortunately, the investment by the government in cycling infrastructure shows that the government is not devoted to improving that level of safety. The Minister may or may not be aware, but approximately 95,000 people in Dublin cycle each day. I'm sure there are very large numbers throughout the rest of the country as well. We know from an answer that the Minister has given to my colleague, Deputy Robert Troy, that investment in cycling infrastructure has decreased significantly over recent years. We know that in 2011, that government spent at 16.3 million on cycling infrastructure. We know that in 2015 that €18.8 million was spent on cycling infrastructure. Regrettably, in 2017, the Minister's first full year in charge of the Department of Transport, only €7 million was spent on improving cycling infrastructure. And I also know from my colleague Deputy Troy that the Minister has announced that this year, 2018, only €8 million will be devoted to cycling infrastructure. It's a derisory amount. It marks a significant decrease in the amount of money that government is spending on cycling infrastructure. If the government is serious about trying to promote cycling, trying to ensure that cycling is encouraged amongst our population, then the government must play its part in trying to make cycling safer. There will obviously always be dangers and threats on the roads, but it is imperative that the government try to ensure that cycling is made safer for citizens who use it. The Minister and his department should be aiming for 10% of his budget to be spent on cycling and walking. In fact, the United Nations recommends that it should be in the region of 20%. So I'd like to hear a commitment from the Minister that steps are going to be made to spend greater resources of the state on making cycling safer for people.
Minister's 4 minutes.
Thank you, Can Corla, and I'd like to first of all join with Deputy Jim O'Callaghan in expressing my sympathy to the family of Harry Boland, who, as he says, was the 6th cyclist killed this year on the roads. I'd also like to thank him for raising this issue, which is a very serious one on to which we're paying a great deal of attention, and we acknowledge the need for improvements in this area. My highest priority in all areas of transport is safety. Tragically, many lives are lost on our roads each year, with 55 people killed to date in road traffic incidents in 2018. This figure includes the 6 cyclists to which Deputy O'Callaghan referred. We've made a great deal of progress in recent years. In 2017, saw the lowest number of road deaths ever in Ireland at 159. However, no one is complacent about this. My department and I are working in conjunction with the Road Safety Authority, the Minister for Justice, and Garda Síochána and the local authorities are continuing to implement measures under the Road Safety Strategy to ensure that the number of fatalities and serious injuries on our roads will continue to fall. Cyclists are particularly vulnerable road users, and we are addressing the issue of cyclist safety through a variety of initiatives. The current Road Safety Strategy, which runs from 2013 to 2020, contains measures to promote the use of personal protection equipment and high-visibility clothing, and developing a standardised road safety cycling proficiency training programme for schools, the Cycle Right programme. Cycle Right was launched in January 2017 and rolled out during the year to as many primary schools as funding allows. Cycling Ireland administer and manage the Cycling Right scheme and maintain a web-based public register of qualified and approved Cycle Right trainers. This new cycle training initiative, which includes an on-road element, will result over time in an increase in the number of children choosing to cycle to and from school safely. The RSA continues to work with cycling groups to promote cycle safety and to produce advertising campaigns aimed at the public, with a particular focus on the need for drivers to take extra care when sharing the road with cyclists. We are also improving our cycling infrastructure. There has already been significant investment in this area in recent years, and this is continuing. As part of Budget 2018, I secured a significant increase in Exchequer capital funding for cycling infrastructure over the period 2018 to 2021. Capital investment of over 110 million will develop cycling and walking infrastructure in the Greater Dublin area and regional cities over the next 4 years. Budget 2018 also saw an increase of 30 million in the multi-annual allocation for greenways, bringing the total for 2018-2021 to over 55 million. In addition, over €750 million is being invested in reconfiguring the bus network as part of Bus Connects, and this will entail construction of new cycling facilities alongside bus routes. Finally, I announced earlier this year that I will bring in new regulations prescribing a minimum passing distance for vehicles overtaking cyclists. As all overtaking offences under road traffic law reside in secondary legislation, my officials have already submitted draft regulations to the Office of the Parliamentary Council for consideration and settling. I understand that it has been sent for legal advice. These provisions will assist in improving cycling safety and in changing driving attitudes to cyclists. Taken together, I believe that these measures will provide increased safe infrastructure for cyclists and contribute to a change in behaviour which will enhance cycle safety.
Yeah, I thank the Minister for his response, and I agree that cyclists are particularly vulnerable road users. However, what I haven't heard from the Minister is a commitment that the Government and he will take steps to try to improve road safety for cyclists. The Minister mentioned some figures in his answer. He can't get away from the fact, unfortunately, that infrastructure spend in 2017, when he was his first full year as Minister for Transport, was only €7 million. And it also appears to be the case that in 2018 that spend is only going to be €8 million. That is not sufficient. The Minister and the Government need to give a commitment that they recognise the importance of cycling, that they recognise that it is a form of transport that needs to be encouraged amongst young people and older people. However, that cannot happen unless people believe that their cycleways and their manner by which they can cycle is going to be safe. At present, I know in this city and I know in other cities and in rural areas, it's not safe. The only way it is going to be made sufficiently safe for more people to be using it is if there's delegated and allocated space on the road for cyclists. We don't have that at present, Count Corla, and we need to ensure that that occurs. It will lead to a huge increase in the number of people who are using cycling if they believe that they and their children will be safe when they're out on the roads cycling. I welcome the fact that the Minister has indicated that he's going to shortly commence the statutory instrument, or bring in a statutory instrument giving effect to the minimum passing distance legislation It's a proposal that my colleague Robert Troy has been very much to the foremost in putting it forward. However, that will be of very limited effect unless it's combined with a commitment by government to ensure that there are going to be cycle paths throughout our cities and our rural areas. The Minister should take a visit to cities such as Copenhagen and Amsterdam. He will see how those progressive cities have devoted huge amounts of resources to facilitating cycling and to encouraging cycling. It would be to the benefit of society as a whole, but regrettably at present, when we have a government that won't commit investment into the infrastructure, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where people won't feel confident about cycling around the city.